was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. And here's the catch, verse number 2. The Lord was with Joseph. You see, that doesn't make sense to me because, see, when I think that the Lord is with someone, I do not understand it to be the Lord was with Joseph and his brothers assaulted him, stole his coat, threw him in a pit, sold him to some traders, sent him to an auction block in Egypt where now he is a slave. At no point would I say to myself, wow, I can see that the Lord is with him. If the Lord was with Joseph in this story, this is what I would picture. The brothers sneak up on him and decide to kill him. Two of them come up behind him and grab him. God strikes them dead immediately. A booming voice from heaven shouts, "Take that, suckers! Thug life!" I have a different image of God than many of you. But that's what I think God would have done. If God was with Joseph, drop the bomb on his brothers. Joseph finds himself far away from home with people he can't even understand their language, having grown up a very wealthy boy in a very wealthy home, and the favorite son of that, he is now a slave, and God was with him. That makes me go, what? How is that possible? And it leads me to a principle that I want you to see on the screen. Not only, this is what we said last week, does God work in you and through you during the times of transition, but God is going to walk with you during the transitions of life. God walks with you in the difficult transitions of life. He's with you. Doesn't always fix it. But God is with you. The story goes on. Joseph finds himself, you probably know the story, finds himself in Potiphar's house. He's there for a number of years, and now he's in his early 20s. Remember, this is a young man, all the more amazing. 17 to 22, 23 years old. One day, Potiphar looks at Joseph, and she realizes that Joseph is a stud. She walks over to him and says, "How about you and me be buddies?" In 21st century vernacular. That's exactly what she asked for. Now, I would think that Joseph would say, because I think I might say, you know what, I know what my God feels about this, but look what my God has done for me. I am a slave in a foreign land. So forget God, forget morals, forget integrity. Who knows if there's a God? I'm going to live the way that I want to live. But Joseph doesn't do that. He looks at her and says, "I cannot offend my God, even though I don't always see him in my life. I will not disobey my God." Potiphar's wife screams for help, accuses Joseph of framing her and trying to rape her, or she frames Joseph and says he was trying to rape her. Now pick up the story in Genesis 39. Joseph's master took him, put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in prison, verse 21, the Lord was with him. You see, I feel like when I'm sort of in prison, the Lord isn't with me, and anybody who's in prison doesn't have the Lord with him. But this story tells me that God was with Joseph in prison. If God was with Joseph, I would think that Potiphar would have walked in on his wife propositioning Joseph, and when he heard Joseph's response, immediately promoted him for his incredible integrity, Trying to figure out what type of God he serves, because that is incredible to resist that type of a temptation, and every man in the room knows that. And then I would have thought that Potiphar would toss his wife to the street corner for this. If God was with Joseph. That's how I see God. But obviously I don't see God right, and I'm sure you I don't see God rightly always, and I'm sure you don't either. We find that God was with him. Let me put another principle on the screen for you. Ready? You cannot look at your circumstances and evaluate correctly whether or not God is active in your life. It is possible that everything is great in your life and God is not involved at all. It is possible that you feel that you are on the underside of the belly of life. Every day is a struggle of monumental proportions, and God is all over your circumstances and all over your life right now, and He does His best work when you're there. But we don't see it that way. We judge God's activity based on our circumstances. And I'm just telling you, if you do that, you will never understand God. God is a much better parent than that. As a parent, sometimes you want your kids to struggle. Not that you want them to struggle, but you want them to struggle because you know it's in that struggle to make the team that they learn character and discipline. And if it was easy, they would take it for granted. It's in that struggle of your children to resist temptation that they become strong. And you know that when they leave home, they will not need mom and dad to keep them straight because they'll be strong. And you want them to struggle, but it breaks your heart to struggle. Your Heavenly Father does not allow you to gauge whether He's at work in your life based on your circumstances. And so many of us do it, which is why we don't understand God. You can't measure God's faithfulness based on your circumstances. You cannot measure God's activity based on your circumstances. You cannot measure God's love for you based on your circumstances. God was with Joseph and his world is falling apart. Gets a little better in prison. He meets the cupbearer of the king. The cupbearer of the king was the guy who tested the cups to make sure the king didn't die. And somehow this guy ended up in prison. So I feel sorry for that king. He's probably dead. He meets Joseph. This cupbearer has a dream, and the dream is interpreted by Joseph, and the dream is good news. Cupbearer, you're getting out, and you're going to be restored to your position. Joseph does what you and I would do. He looks at the cupbearer and says, hey, you know, when you get out, would you tell the king that there's this guy in prison who's really good at forecasting the future, and maybe he shouldn't be there? Like it's a waste of assets. Of course, what happens? The cupbearer forgets. You see, if God was with Joseph, the cupbearer remembers, in my thinking. But God was with Joseph, and the cupbearer forgot. That's how God works. You see, guess what? Most of us aren't content with a God that walks with us through transition. Most of us want a God who bails us out of transition. Because we are not interested in the same things that our God is interested in. Our God is interested in our spiritual life. Our God is interested in our relationship with God and our relationship with a community of believers and our relationship with people that don't know Jesus and our relationship with our children. God is interested in our character. He's interested on the inside of us. He's all about eternity. We're about this life. And oh my goodness, life is difficult. There is no God. And God's like, are you kidding me? And we want a God who always bails us out. And God doesn't always do that. I'd certainly have written the story different for many of you. Some of you, this is what it sounds like. Let's take Joseph's story. I was faithful to my husband, raised the kids. He walked in and said, leaving you. And God was with me. That's the story of your life. I did my best at my job. I lost my job. It sent me through 2 years of hell. I lost my house. I'm living with my family. I'm embarrassed. I don't feel like a man. But my God was with. All I wanted to be was a mother and a wife. I dream about it. I'm growing in my faith to try to become that perfect lady. And I look around and there are no men for me. And here I sit single and desiring a relationship and a family like I see some of the other people have in the church. And I feel lonely and depressed at night. And God is with you. I labored in ministry for years and years, loving people with every ounce of my being. And some of the people that I love so much say mean things, and it hurts so deeply. But God is with me. I love my church, and it seems to be gone. And I feel so sad, and I feel so I don't even know how to describe it. And God is with me.